The title of the presentation is A Sketch on Dynamic Access and its Consequences. Please welcome Jae-Young Shim.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jae-Young Shim from Gyeongsang National University. Forgive me for standing. I just feel this way. So I'm excited to share with you my ongoing, actually preliminary work, and I look forward to insightful comments and feedback from you today. So let me begin with a brief overview of my So let me begin with a brief overview of my presentation. So I'll first briefly talk about some conceptual problems with the operation transfer and PIC, and then I move on to my own proposal that I call dynamic access, in which I basically argue that the interfaces directly access the derivation upon each merge. And then I will conclude the presentation with some sample derivations in my DA model, and then with some conceptual and empirical challenges to my model. And one more thing, if we happen to be running out of time, I'll skip one or two slides that are relatively less important. So the operation transfer and PIC. So I'm going to briefly talk about three conceptual problems with those two operations. So it is a conventional assumption that once a phase is completed, like here, once a phase is completed, a specific domain called the phasal complement domain is sent off to each interface by the operation transfer, and the exact same domain is blocked access by the condition PIC. So this state of affairs naturally lead us to the first problem that I'd like to point out, which is redundancy. So basically the idea is, for the sake of argument, suppose that transfer applies before PIC, which means that, so transfer applies to here and send this off to each interface. So basically YP is gone. YP disappeared from the syntax. Then the natural question that we can ask is, what is it that PIC blocks access to? YP is not there, right? So this is the first problem I'd like to point out, redundancy. And the second problem is look ahead. Now suppose that YP is a WH phrase, then eventually it'll end up in the specifier position of CP. But before that, it has to move from here to what's called the phase edge, right? But this particular movement is a clear example of look ahead, because this movement, YP moves to this phase edge as if it knows its future destiny. So figuratively speaking, probably no fortune teller can be as accurate as this movement of YP, so to speak. And then the last problem I'd like to point out is the ad hoc nature of the domain targeted by the operation transfer and PIC. So given that the two operations are motivated by computational efficiency, then it would be more computationally efficient if both mechanisms target an area larger than beta. So, for example, alpha, or even the entire phase. Then, it would be much more computationally efficient. Actually, there's been some previous research in this direction. So growth 2015, for example. I don't like green teas because it makes my tongue very dry. Because of my genetics or something. Sorry. So growth 2015, for example, proposes what is called total transfer, in which basically the idea is once a phase is completed, the entire phase is transferred to each interface. So that's basically growth's idea. And from that perspective, we can call Chomsky's approach a partial transfer, because once a phase is completed, it's not the entire phase, but some portion, some part of the phase is transferred. So we call it a partial transfer or partial approach. And my merge-based transfer, actually there's no transfer. I'll get to that later. So, but my dynamic axis can be seen as more partial than Chomsky's idea. So at this point, you might wonder, if computational complexity will increase if access takes place upon each merge. But take a look at this little table. So as you can see, here I compare total transfer and partial transfer in terms of computational load and the number of access or the number of transfer. Then you can see here, as computational load goes up, the number of access actually goes down, and vice versa. So therefore, in this case, in this particular case, the notion of computational efficiency, I think, is maybe in the eye of the beholder. So that's what I think. Now, I'll make more presentations as possible to get as much as feedback. So this is the central slide. The central ideas of my dynamic axis model. So as a working hypothesis, I assume that each interface directly accesses the derivation upon each merge. So this implies a lot of stuff. So first, it implies that there's no mechanism or operation such as transfer that mediates between, say, the syntax proper and the interfaces. So we don't need that kind of additional operation, simply because in my dynamic axis model, in the conventional model, the interfaces are viewed as passive recipients of the information delivered for them by the operation transfer. But here in my dynamic axis model, the interfaces are actively participating in interpretation. So we don't need additional operations such as transfer. So figuratively speaking, I don't have an operation, something like a tower crane that moves an object from point A to point B. So from point A, syntax proper, and point B, the interface. We don't need that kind of mediating operation because the interfaces will directly access the derivation. That's my working hypothesis. And two assumptions. I think these two are quite intuitive to me, but I'm not sure how they will look to you. So the first one is each interface interprets what it can interpret. So I think it's quite intuitive, or if not, tautology. And the second assumption I make is a fully interpreted syntactic objects become inert, or inaccessible, or invisible, depending on your preference, terminological preference. So I believe the two assumptions are quite intuitive to me. So this is the central ideas in my DA model. And now I'm moving on to so these ideas of mine are not entirely new, but actually built upon some predecessors. And so as for upon merge, access upon merge, is actually has been proposed by the late Epstein and Seeley in 2002 and 2006, where they argue that both PF and LF interpret the output of each transformation operation, and merge is one of those transformation operations. So this basically says pretty much the same thing that I say here. And as for inactiveness of syntactic objects, Chomsky et al. 2019 proposes that no structure is eliminated. This is a slightly modified version of transfer, where even after transfer, no structure is eliminated. They are there, but they are just are rendered inaccessible to further syntactic computation. So the idea is quite similar to my assumption here. And lastly, as for access, direct access by the interface, Chomsky more recently, 2021, suggests that interpretation basically spells out access, direct access by external cognitive systems, namely the SM and CI interface. So, as I said, my working hypothesis and these two assumptions are not entirely new, but built upon their precursors. And now, let's take a look at some sample derivations with relatively simple structure, like John likes Mary. So the A is the outcome of the first merge, and the interface that directly accesses the derivation. And notice that both neither R nor Mary is fully interpretable, because for R, its category information is not specified, and for Mary, its case feature is not specified. Therefore, they remain accessible. And the outcome of the second merge, where little v is introduced, access takes place. Notice that at this stage of the derivation, both R and Mary become fully interpretable, simply because of the same reason. R, its category is specified by the categorizer, this star, and the case information about Mary is specified by the little v. Therefore, both become fully interpretable, meaning that they are rendered inaccessible or invisible, indicated by the outline fonts. And the next step, the subject is introduced, and for the same reason with the Mary, John at this stage remains accessible without its case feature specified. And skipping one or two steps, and finally C and T are introduced, and then as you can see, everyone is happy here. So notice that at any point of the derivation, I didn't talk about internal rows at all. So actually here, John does not move to the specifier position of T. So I'm going to talk about this in more detail on the next slide. So let's take a look at a little more complicated structure where a double phrase occurs, like, what did John buy? So the first merge, so pretty much the same. I'm not going to repeat all of the specifics, but I'll just to focus on important things. So here, both R and what remain inaccessible, or remain active, or visible. But notice that the difference between the regular MPs, like John, and the WH phrase. WH phrases have two requirements to be met. One is its category, no, it's not category, but case related, case property, and the other is property related to, it's being an operator. Whether you call it a WH feature or a Q feature, the exact nature of the uninterpreted features doesn't quite matter in my analysis. What matters is whether what has an additional requirement to be met. Okay? So it has two requirements. So at this stage, even if this case has been specified, it still remains active because it's an operator-related property has not been specified at all. So at this stage, both John and what remain active or visible or accessible. And finally, CQ is introduced. And then there's agree going on between the two when the operator feature, W feature or Q feature is satisfied. Then finally, all of the syntactic objects will be happy. Again, notice that there's no IM involved with the WH phrase. And then probably one of you might wonder if the distance between the two is too far away, or search by CQ is far deep down. But notice that, as I said, all of the elements intervening between CQ and what have been invisible or inaccessible or inactive. So basically what CQ sees, from here, it doesn't see all of the intervening elements. It can only see what over there. So the distance doesn't matter. So visually, it may look more like this. Okay? And this idea, again, is quite similar to, I have like 10 minutes?
More than 10 minutes.
Oh, more than 10 minutes. I think I'm doing more quick. So now I'm going to slow down. Okay, so basically, this derivation and the idea is, in a sense, quite similar to what Chomsky proposes in his box system or box theory. So basically, Chomsky's idea is that when this one moves to another place, then it is stuck there. So figuratively speaking, what two is boxed there, even though Chomsky doesn't like the terminology of boxing. And then now the problem is, how can we deal with the overt realization of what in the specifier position of CP? So Chomsky's solution is that CQ searches for what's in the phase edge. So for our case, John is not relevant here. So basically, what 2 is at the phase edge. So CQ can see what 2. So there's an agree going on between the two. Basically penetrating all of the intermediate elements. And then he also suggests that in his 2023, so he says in the lecture, online lecture, it says something like, the boxed elements, these two, are just sitting there, so you don't have to look down. I actually don't know what this means, but the point is that because they're just there, so CQ doesn't care whether there are 2 elements in between or 300 elements in between. It can only what's at the phase edge is only relevant to the search by CQ. So the idea is, in a sense, pretty similar, between the Chomsky's box system and my dynamic access model. And then notice that here, the internal merge is a one-time occurrence in Chomsky's box system. Whenever it undergoes movement, then it is stuck there. So all of the IM is basically a one-time occurrence in Chomsky's recent theory. And in my dynamic access model, no movement is involved. So it may look, the difference is huge between the two, but it's only difference by 1. So only one internal merge in Chomsky's system, and internal merge is just reduced to 0 from 1 in my dynamic access model. And figuratively speaking, probably I'll skip the last slide because something can go wrong. We might have to word this people. And then the last thing is a very serious stuff, challenges to my DA model. So one serious challenge comes from language variation, like the obvious variation. There are, like WH and C2 languages like Korean and presumably Japanese, Chinese as well. And there are also WH ex-C2 languages like English and lots of European languages. So the question is, how can I deal with, how can I deal with the overt realization of the WH phrase in the specifier position if there's no internal merge in my system? For Chomsky, I believe Chomsky attributes the language variation between these two types of languages, attribute the difference to the inherent nature of the WH phrase, presumably maintaining his ideas in 1964 and developed by other numerous scholars, famously Watanabe and Nishigauchi. So basically, for Chomsky, the difference between the two languages lie in the inherent nature of what. So figuratively speaking, and simply put, so English what has some sort of requirement, I need to be there. That kind of requirement, it has inherently, while the WH phrases in languages like Korean or Japanese, they don't have that kind of requirement. So perhaps the inner structure of the WH phrase in those languages might be different. But this is kind of temporary, right? Because the whole work, the whole research is at a preliminary stage. But now, still, I'm thinking the difference. I think it might be better to attribute the difference to a certain kind of, let's call it a parameter working at the interface. So the parameter probably looks something like this. The locality condition at the interfaces. The languages like English probably require agreeing elements. So in this case, CQ and the WH phrase to occur as adjacent as possible to each other, while languages like Korean or Japanese do not have that kind of locality condition. So to put differently, this parameter is on for WH ex-C2 languages, but it's off for languages like Japanese or Korean. So I think it might be better to attribute the difference language variation not to the inherent property of the WH phrases, but to a parameter or a condition working at the interfaces. As I said, this is just a temporary proposal or idea. And perhaps the biggest challenge to my dynamic model or to any other model comes from the effect of successive cyclicity. So German is one of the famous languages where the overt manifestation of successive cyclicity appears in the intermediate spec of CP. So this is a when, which is who. So basically when it moves, it appears first in the specifier of the embedded CP, and then the specifier of the highest CP, so overtly manifested. So this is sometimes called the WH copying. So this is clear evidence for the effect of successive cyclicity, right? So the question is, how can I accommodate or incorporate this evidence into my DA model? But interestingly, this is based on Frank 2015. So take a look at 6. So if the WH is what is called a full-fledged WH phrase, like Weltmann or Witchman, so it's a fuller than this one. Then, interestingly, the intermediate spec cannot be overtly occupied the copy of this full-fledged WH element. Instead, it must be occupied by what is called the WH expletive. So based on this kind of data, Frank's 2015 proposes that all intermediate effects are in fact head effects. not phrasal effects. And then to account for this head effects, he proposes very, very extremely vague notion of entanglement. So the idea is, Frank's idea is basically when C search for a double-edged phrase and it encounters a category of the same type, then the two are somehow entangled. I think he borrowed this terminology from physics, obviously, but he doesn't go into detail to explain, what exactly is entanglement. So probably one way to solve the problem or accommodate this overt effect of successive cyclicity is to refine the notion of, or the mechanism of entanglement myself. So again, this is a temporary idea, preliminary idea. And these two are successive cyclicity, overt effect of successive cyclicity, and the difference between languages in terms of the over realization of double-edged phrases are major challenges to my DA. I think this is the end of. But I still have like 1 minute.
1 minute.
Then I can go over some selective references. So on and so forth. So this is. I'm pretty much finished, so I can take
So,
as much as feedback.
so we have 12 minutes for discussion. Any other comments or observation and questions? Do you have any questions or comments? 저기 들으면 돼요. 기다려주세요.
Okay, thank you. I have quick questions. So in your system, let's take passive. John was arrested. How does it work?
Right. Great question. John was arrested.
So arrested John, and then do you leave John there because the case
they're
level
in
is
the
not
spec
satisfied?
TP, right? They're in the spec TP. John has to move to
The TP spec.
TP spec.
Okay, so
So how can I, if there's no movement in my model? Oh, no, I remember.
네네. 다음에 이거 끝나볼게요.
So when I say the locality condition at the interfaces, so basically if there's an agreement between two elements in the syntax, the two must must occur as adjacent as possible. So it also applies to a movement, not only to a bar movement, double-edged movement. It also applies to a movement. So there's got to be some sort of agreement between T and John, right? So that this kind of locality condition working for languages like English, therefore John must occur as adjacent as possible to T. So that's my basic idea.
so you don't really move or anything, just that
No,
he
yeah.
agreed with John down below, and the John realized.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, basically what I'm saying is what I would like to say, propose, is that probably IM is not an effect in the syntax proper, but it's an effect at SM.
So kind of related question is, I just want to follow the basic facts. That's now the John tried John to win.
I haven't thought about that.
So let's do it. So win has John as a subject position, EA.
Mhm.
And then John is not satisfied in anything, a case property or whatever. And then you move on, and then you have try. And then Chomsky argues that the external merge John to there. As a result, you get John try John to win. Okay, so I'm wondering what's going to happen in this situation. For Chomsky, higher John and lower John is a copy pairs. So the lower one will get sort of deleted or do not pronounce. But you don't have that kind of process, right? Like you basically assume that
I only talk about, say, internal merge, but probably I can assume, I can accommodate, Chomsky's form copy type of argument if there are.
So
Would it-
my
would it-
question was, for Chomsky, internal John has case and not checked. So it's a problematic John. But since higher John is there, so lower John kind of gets deleted. As a result, you don't have any problem. But for you, like every occurrence of John should be satisfied, right? No?
Oh, let's see. To be honest, I haven't thought about the control construction.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then,
the generic purpose.
Then there are basically two Johns. One is higher and the other is lower.
Yeah, and each John has external argument, theta role. Higher John gets cased, but the lower John doesn't get cased.
Well, one way to weigh out might be taking advantage of, I'm not sure, part of the case for the lower John. Or the other way to weigh out might be, when Chomsky talks about inaccessibility or invisibility of syntactic objects in terms of syntactic operations, I think back in 2015 or something like that, it says something like, even though this element is rendered invisible, but it is available to, say, labeling algorithm, no other operations. Yeah, perhaps in a sense I can use that kind of what's it called, granularize the concept of inaccessibility or invisibility, depending on which operation we're talking about. So that's my preliminary idea, but very unsatisfactory. Sorry.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
We have online question too.
Yep.
Can we?
I don't accept.
Professor Song Kim, can you hear me? So you raised your hand.
I think you need to
Type in
the questions there.
I don't see.
Maybe he will ask the question.
I can hear it.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Professor?
It's not there.
Okay, maybe Professor Park first. Yeah.
It's stuck. Oh, it's there. It's moving.
Oh,
Can I ask you a question?
yes, please.
Do you hear me?
Yep.
I have a question about your locality conditionality interfaces. I mean, you said that languages like Korean differently from languages like English differently from Korean. English requires agreeing elements to occur as close as possible to each other. This reminds me of the discussion made by Seth Cable in his dissertation 2010 at MIT. So first a particle attracts a WH element to its nearest position, maybe the speck of CP, for example. Do you know about that?
No, I didn't know about that. Did you say Seth Cable? Seth
Cable.
Yeah, I know who it is, but I haven't.
Yes, your conditions very, very similar to his to his hypothesis that the two elements must be adjacent or as close as possible.
I see.
In terms of head agreement.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the second question, this follow-up question is why does
The
your
two
locality conditional interface holds? I mean, why not in Korean, for example?
Yeah.
Why
That's
the
a
English
very,
moves?
very deep question that I have no ability to. I don't have any answer to that deep question for now. So I think it's a very important question, but for now, I don't have any clear answer to that question.
Okay, can I ask one more?
Do we have?
Yeah, we have only 3 minutes, please. Yeah, yes, please. Quick question, please.
Make it less deep.
One more about number 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
German
Yeah, this is an example of the famous the German partial example, partial double-edged movement, isn't it?
No, if it's partial, the double-edged phrase only occurs in the intermediate specifier, right? So that's an example of partial, but this is a.
Yes, the first double-edge is a kind of double-edge split, and
No,
the second
the-
double-edge is.
The intermediate double-edged phrase does not stop there. It further moved to the higher specifier of the CP, so it's I would say full-fledged successive movement. So it's and if it were a partial movement, as you suggested, then we only see one occurrence of Venn in the intermediate specifier of the CP. So,
Okay, then how can you explain the partial double-edged movement in German
If-
or in
Yeah.
L1, L2 English learners?
Yeah, very good question. If I were able to, account for partial movement, then I would probably have those examples on my slide. So, yeah, very good question. I need to work on it. So, yeah, now I don't have any clear answer to partial movement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Especially thank you for SAP cable. Was it 2000? Sorry.
2010.
Because
Thank you.
10.
Okay.
Well, actually, as for the locality condition, I also proposed a similar condition in my own paper, but I named it like something like equal embedding. So if there are two elements in agreement relation, the two have to be equally embedded in the structure, basically right next to each other. So I I proposed that in my, I don't remember, 2000 something paper.
Okay, sorry for interrupting you, but we don't have
Okay,
any
thank you.
time. Okay, thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you. If you have any
Thank you for
questions, further
valuable
comments,
comments.
please ask him personally. Thank you.
Thank you.